Hello and welcome back to another episode of the podcast Wild, Wise and Whole. Thank you for being here. Today I have a gorgeous guest episode. I am joined by the amazing Starling, who is first and foremost a gorgeous and wonderful human being. She is also a pop singer and creativity mentor. And in this episode, we unpack how you can take your life from meh to magic, and we talk about how embracing creativity in areas of life, overcoming blocks that hold us back from reaching our full potential, how childhood narratives shape who we are and the self-belief that we have. And then we also have a really amazing section where we discuss money and we talk about the attachment and the cultural influences that impact our financial mindset and why that's so important to taking your life from meh to magic, and also giving you that permission slip that you need to know that you can make money and you can have money from a passion and creativity and being authentic and just doing something that lights you up. So I love this conversation. I think we cover so much and I think it's so beautiful, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I enjoyed recording it for you. Thank you so much for listening and being here. Enjoy. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the podcast Wild, Wise and Whole. Today I have a wonderful, lovely human being who I'm so excited to chat with. Starling, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for being here. Please introduce yourself and tell the listeners a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Oh, so happy to be with you today, Lydia. So my name is Starling, and I'm mainly a pop singer and songwriter. But more recently, in the last 3 to 4 years, I have given talks on creativity and money for creatives and self-belief that have kind of gone international. I then created a platform where I mentor individually and in groups people to go. I always say people's lives to turn from meh to magic. So it's
Oh,
just
I
about,
love that.
yeah, just from going like, "Meh, I'm okay, but not fabulous," and then into that magic. And obviously, what your version of magic or success is truly individual. The creatives that I deal with often want to talk about money and leveraging income through their joy and passion and talent. But of course, I've also given talks to guys and given talks to people that don't want to talk about money but just want to feel more empowered. So I would say I'm a singer and a speaker.
Wonderful. I think as well, I know we're going to talk about some really nice topics today, money, we're going to talk about safety, but I think the creativity piece is really interesting because I think when people hear that, they might associate that with a certain type of person. But I am curious if you try to help people see that we all have creativity inside of us and we are all creative in some way. Like, do you find people see that or they fit creativity into like a certain box or a certain narrative?
I love that. I I think that you're right. I think that people have an idea of what being creative means. And actually, even someone that sort of has a 9 to 5 and doesn't think they're creative comes home and cooks the most incredible casserole or bakes a cake and or does their bedroom in a certain way. And to me, that everybody is a creative. I think that the difference with labels, and we have to be super careful of the boxes that we put on ourselves and that we put on others, is whether you want to use your creativity to either to be a constant in your life so that you're doing it every day or every week, or some painting or some singing on the weekend. And then of course the second piece is whether you want to monetize it. And I'm not of the school of thought that you have to monetize your art in order to be a creative, but often I attract people in my world that want to use their creativity as a way of life rather than as a side hustle or a hobby. And that's exciting. Is like, you don't need a day job, you don't need to have something boring that you do. Your life could just be a work of art.
What are the blocks that you see with some people to getting them from the myth to magic? So like creating a life that feels like a work of art, or I love the saying is like life feeling like a love letter, or like life is making
Wow.
love to you in the small moments. Because I think even this morning I just put a song on that I like and I just tapped into some sensual movement and I had my like cup of coffee in my hand, so it wasn't anything, big and intense, but it was literally a moment where it just felt like life was making love to me, just wrapping itself around me. And I was like, oh God, it's just so magic when you can experience that. So what are some blocks that you see for people?
I think, well, the first one that comes to mind is essentially that people don't feel that they have what it takes. so they don't feel good enough, or they've got borrowed beliefs. So their parents have told them that if you're going to be creative, you will be poor. If you're going to be an artist, an actor, a singer, you will be poor. And of course, we know it's an old paradigm, but unfortunately, our parents or family, even culture, string the story still, even though it's 2025, that
Yeah.
if you want to do what you love, somehow you need to suffer. And often we couple poverty and pain with creativity. And I'm kind of here to change that narrative that you can be rich and creative, or you can be abundant and expressive at the same time. They don't need to come from separate places or sources. The biggest blocks around not feeling good enough. So let's get into that. So mainly people feel like they're not good enough because they've got some, again, it's to do with beliefs. They've got some kind of narrative or story that they need to be younger or thinner, or they need to be more this or trained in that, or they need to have this qualification. I mean, it depends which kind of line of work we're talking about, but there's just something they're not quite enough of. And this is a human problem. So we often feel as kids we're either not enough or we're too much. Oh, you're too much. You're a show off, Lydia. I used to get be told,
I
Starling,
used
you're a
to
show
that.
off. Yeah. So it's like, oh, so I need to dim my light, but then hang on, then I go into like an audition and then apparently I'm not enough. So it's very confusing. And so essentially, without being too generalist for anyone that's listening, one of the greatest things you can do to work out if you're in that camp and if there's some kind of belief or block that isn't true but is getting in the way is you can write out what is the meaning I made of the childhood experiences I had. And the meaning we make is often the backpack we carry invisibly, and then we're finding evidence for why it's true. So one of my sort of examples, my parents got divorced when I was 6.5, 7. And the meaning I made is that I'm not worth sticking around. That's why my dad went. And it's not true at all. The parents just needed to divorce. The relationship wasn't great. And the meaning I made was if I was prettier, if I was more lovable. And I was 6 or 7, my brain wasn't even formed. And as kids, anything under 10, we make the meaning of it's our fault. So if our mum's in a bad mood, it's because of me. If our dad is out too much, it's because I'm not lovable. But none of these stories are true. So if you were to write down what's the meaning I made of the childhood experiences that I received, you would start to realize how your brain, even before it was fully formed as an adult, has created stories that aren't true. And they're now being seen in your career or your lack of career.
Yeah. I love that little like technique that people can do. And I
Yeah,
think it's like,
give it a go.
yeah, because as children, when you can't make sense of something, the go-to is to internalize. And then that kind of gets like stored, right? And then I work with a lot of people who are like, when I mention like bringing inner child in, they'll almost be like, well, I don't know. Like they don't understand why we're doing that. And I'm like, okay, so another really nice technique you can do is like if something comes up arises, like a belief, you can just take a breath and feel into it. And I get clients to just tune into how old do you feel in that right now?
Love that
Some
so
of them might
much.
say like 5, and then they'll go, weird. That's just what organically come. And I'm like, okay, let's stay with that. And then we work with that. And then a memory might start to come, and they're like, oh, wow, I have this memory where like you said something happened and I made that mean something about me. I'm like, okay, so you see, like when that beliefs comes in, like the pattern that the body or the energetic imprint of the age that the body's holding when that comes in is a 5-year old. So you're showing up in your life now as a 32-year-old woman, but actually there's this little 5-year-old in the driver's seat and you have no awareness of that. And they're like, oh my God. I'm like, that's why it's so important to do inner child work and integrate those parts of us because, like you said, we make meaning, and usually that meaning is there's something wrong with me
Totally.
and we carry that around and that massively impacts us. And that when we think about authenticity, it's like that massively stops us being our most authentic embodied women.
Yeah. And I just want to state something super obvious for the audience, Lydia, is the narrative, the stories that we have created pre-10 are completely inaccurate.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. People always think, oh, there's a segment of truth. Like if I was a better daughter, I wouldn't have been left. Or if I was more lovable, I wouldn't have this. And actually, there's not anything in that that's true. The situation was bad or the environment was bad. And the meaning that we made is that I'm bad, which isn't true. And when we detangle the spaghetti, we start to see the real truth, turn it inside out, and then go, okay, if there's nothing wrong with me, I was just in a bad environment, how can I live my life as an adult now? And that, it sounds so easy and simple, and I've just tied it up in a bow. But that, if you really contemplate that, and if the listeners like press pause now, that's like oh my God, we could just put wings on their back and they'll go and fly. So there's that piece around about not being good enough is one of the main blocks for creatives. But as I've just mentioned, there's also a narrative. And when there's unconscious agreements with these narratives that are wrong, so the unconscious agreement that, you know, you're going to be poor if you're an artist, and there's other stories that are fed in this culture that are wrong, it will just mean you create that because you haven't really thought about your beliefs. You'll just create the common narrative. So again, it's worth slowing down to speed up, which is, okay, what are the beliefs I have around money and my art? What are the beliefs I have around being paid for who I am? Oh, it couldn't possibly be that easy, or I'm not that lovable, or I'm not, and all these stories, if you just journaled that, again, you would start to notice that you're playing quite small.
It's like the percentage, if we could see almost like a little percent by the side of our heads of like how much we're playing small, I think we would be amazed by that. Because I think so many people are, because it's the safety piece, right? It's like so many people are playing small because it feels like the safer option. Um, and I think
Totally.
that, you know, with money, with authenticity, with all of these different things, it's like there's a sense of like if I'm seen, if I open myself up, that feels super unsafe. And then especially if you've got like all of these really deep rooted narratives that are playing out, is like one of mine about money, and I know we're going to talk about money, so this kind of lends quite nice into it. But I didn't realize one of mine to do with money was like being where I'm from Liverpool, you know, like from a working class city. There's a narrative almost like etched into just being from this city and the generations before me as like we struggle and we're working class, and it's like, you know, there's like a struggle identified with being from this city, and I didn't realize that, and not every person from this city might feel that, but for me definitely I felt it as like success was something that you had to work really hard for, and there would always be an element of struggle in my story. And then it was when I really started to do like the nervous system work and look at that pattern that was there around feeling safe to receive money. I was like, oh wow, there's like this whole narrative that that's part of it. I'm gonna have to struggle. But also the other narrative for me was like coming from a working class family was if I'm successful and I have money and I do it in a way, by the way, that's not the 9 to 5. So if I do it through creativity or I do it through like being self-employed, that's going to disconnect me from my family, which to my inner child and to my nervous system to be exiled like that is like that equals death. Like I'm going to be on my own, I'm going to be shunned, I'm going to be so different. I don't want to do that. So I'm just going to stay in this pattern of like struggle and a little bit of success, but not too much. And I just thought that was fascinating to kind of have that realization.
I absolutely love this, Lydia, and I feel like people don't talk about geographical connection to finance enough
Yeah.
in this world that we're like, everyone's equal. You can make your life for yourself. And actually, depending on where you're from and the stories that were fed and we're talking about identity. So the
Yeah.
identity that we have and our identity, if it's slightly wrapped up in, you know, we need to be in pain around money in order to connect with our family, or we need to be in pain around our careers and not fully thrive so that we can have something to complain about with our friends. Like we're talking about connection. And then that leads me into talking about attachment v authenticity. And so it's so important where, you know, we're pack animals. Brené Brown talks about this way better than I do. But essentially, attachment is what we go for when we just want connection and we just complain about something to our friends when we don't really mean it, but we just want to have something to connect over, for instance. And then you've got the authenticity piece, which is who you really are or who you really want to be and evolve into. And often that can be clashing with the family we're from. For instance, the working class piece you talked about with Liverpool, the city, or for instance, there are some Asian kind of clients or artists I have at the moment that are doing really well. And what comes up for them in the private one-to-ones, without disclosing too much, is that by them succeeding as an artist, they're not a doctor, they're not a lawyer, and they're not a teacher. And that doesn't work well for their mum, who's back home, etc., etc. So we've got an identity piece around who we're being within the family dynamic, even though we might be 30 or 40 or 50. And so again, it's that authenticity versus attachment, in that it's easy to say, let's all be authentic. But the truth is, it can really go against our core need as a human animal, a packed animal, to be part of a collective. And so that's where we have to really move slowly as we elevate our lives.
nice as well to like bring those different dynamics in, because I think it is really important. And I think especially because I work with like so many different, and you as well, you know, we work, when you work with people and you're a space holder, you see different experiences and you connect to different experiences, and it makes you realize like, yes, we are ourselves, but then also we're in this web of like generations before us and cultures and where we live and cities, and you know, that's a part of the piece that's so important to bring into sessions, because it's like when you can have conversations around money, safety, being authentic, creativity, all of the things that we're discussing here, it's like to bring that into the conversation in itself is like so unbelievably liberating and
Totally.
so
And I would
important.
add that the slight blind spot, if I'm honest, with our wellness world and all about like emancipation and be who you choose to be, whilst I'm all about that, obviously, the slight blind spot of the individualist, capitalist sort of world we live in is not taking into account the dynamics and the culture in which we grew up in, either just the immediate household, so the family, or beyond that, the immediate town, city, or country. Like I said about some of the girls I'm working with from India that are like, wait, what? This is really challenging. And I'm like, hang on, I didn't know this was a challenge. And then we bring it up, and it's like, of course it is. Of course, it's very scary for them to make money from being an artist rather than being in a safe job. Yeah, yeah.
It's like a privilege as well as like white, you know, like even though we've got our struggles, is like as white women to hold spaces for these different conversations. It's like I just always feel like incredibly privileged to just hear a different experience, and then that really makes me think about, oh, okay, so it just makes me really mindful, you know, even as simple as like my friend's just recently become a mum, and she said, you know, I was someone that would always say to clients, you can find 10 minutes and her baby's like 5 months old, and she's like, oh my God, it's made me realize like it is so hard to find 10 minutes. Like it's so hard for me some days to get a shower, never mind to find 10 minutes to meditate. And she's like, it's just really made me think about like how, like you said, we can kind of put the blinkers on and kind of not be connected to other people's experiences and what they might need in order to create safety or to be more abundant. So I think conversations like this are just even important to have them, because it will then make listeners think about their experience beyond just themselves and maybe what they're seeing on social media.
Oh, literally, Lydia. And I would go as far to say it's like we are who we spend our time with.
Yeah, for
And we
sure.
are what we consume. So, like, if you've had an upbringing, or like, again, I'm coming back to this Asian example, but it could be anything, like you were saying about Liverpool. You know, you don't understand how this has impacted your beliefs around money or succeeding or putting yourself out there in a non-conventional way. This is
Yeah.
essentially what I'm suggesting and supporting people in with my services, is like, you can have a life you love that is outside of the box. But before we go any deeper in like how you strategize and create that, you have to consider the environment in which you have become Starling, or you have become Lydia, and you have become who you are. It's such a huge topic, and I think, again, this sounds sort of, yeah, super obvious, but I think there's something around just deepening our compassion, that, you know, if you've got a new baby and you're in your first 6 months, as they call it, I think, the war zone, you're literally like, of course you can't shower every day, and it's just compassion for, you know, some babies are more work than others, but generally you are going to be lacking in sleep and therefore focus. Or if you're from a certain city or culture, it might not be as easy for you to just kind of do, you know, go against the grain and do something fresh. So yeah, I think you're right. As space holders, we need to be compassionate. At the same time, I think we need to be really resourceful. So if someone doesn't have a lot of time, how do we help that person? Or if somebody is from a culture where they're being very, very judged for being the tall poppy, you know, that phrase, how do we support them in feeling safe when they're being different? And one of my actually first singles was called Misfit. And although I'm sort of a middle class white girl from the suburbs, there was a lot of things that happened to me that weirdly made me feel like, even though I don't look like it, made me feel like a misfit. And again, how do we support people to yeah, have a life outside of the box, i.e. be the misfit, but feel safe to do that? And that's, you know, we're creating future icons, you know, that they're the artists that you're like, oh my God, I love you. Because they're not like anyone else. They're honoring their true essence, and they're bringing that true essence into the spotlight.
And I would love to shift, like talk about the money a little bit more, because I think it's so important, and I think it's so important for women to just hear conversations about money. And I know this is something that you're talking about a lot at the minute and supporting people with. So what where's like a good starting point for this conversation to just like open it up about money?
I love this. So, two of the things that I teach, just off the top of my head, I'm actually in a week of giving free money talks. I'm happy to link kind of that as and when you release this episode, if it's useful to your audience. So, two super basic things that will be very helpful for people, whether in a great relationship with money at the great spot with their money, or whether they're new to understanding how to have a healthier dynamic with earning, spending, and saving. The first thing is money loves clarity. So if you don't know off the top of your head how much it costs to run your personal life and those bills, and then how much it costs to run your business, like that's where we would start. It's just super like masculine, basic structure of like what's coming in, what's going out. And then, looking at price points, how many people would you need to hit that goal if you're going to stretch your income? And if you're not selling something from a self-employed perspective, what do you need to do to start receiving more from a super practical perspective? So money loves clarity. The second thing is the reason we all get our knickers in a twist around money and having enough, or making a meaning of it, like, oh, she's rich, therefore she's better, or this or that or the other, is because money is directly associated with safety. And I know you know this and teach this. And so if we don't have enough, we feel completely unsafe. We're up in the middle of the night. Like it's so important we have financial health and that we have a relationship with money. Now, why do most people not really have a relationship with money and money kind of runs them? Well, often, again, back to childhood, they either have some money trauma. I know that I've certainly had money trauma, and it's sort of coloured their ability to be intimate with money. So, the people that like get a credit card bill and then they put it in the drawer. This literally used to be me in my 20s. It's that avoidant attachment to avoidant style to kind of their finance, because I just can't possibly. And actually, when we look at the numbers, it's not that bad. We just get to look at like, okay, is there debt, or what's going on, or what do we really need to do to move the needle? But B, we understand that really we're feeling so fraught or scared, or let's say, I don't know, HMRC are after you for some random number or something. We sometimes get these bills that are unexpected. We need to come back to safety. And so one of the basic things I do in my talks is just look at 3 to 4 exercises that are super quick. So it might be, I do one which is where you tap your collarbones. So super simple. I know this is audio, so I won't necessarily be able to show you. But in my talks, I just show 3 to 4 exercises you could do every morning before you check your bank balance. And not only will it help you be intimate with the numbers, clarity, remember, is king, but also it will help you be able to realize that you can rewire, almost like, I think they call it neuroplasticity, where you can start to have positive thoughts around building your wealth and your relationship with this thing we called money. So yeah, I teach a lot about how to have embodied safety, as I call it, embodied safety, before we actually look at the numbers. And then once we know where we're at, we can be like, right, are we in a good spot? Do we want to make more? Or is the money we're making great, but it's from a source that I don't want to make it in that way anymore? I.e., why a lot of people come to me is to leave their day job and to be an artist.
I resonate with a lot. I was also very avoidant
Yeah.
in tears of money. I was just like, no, don't want to look at that. And I think the problem with that was like because I always had kind of money in the bank somewhat. I mean, it would decrease and sometimes create like this anxiety, but because I always had like enough to cover my bills, I never really checked it or I never really kind of looked too far into it. So starting to face your money and like look at your money, I think yeah, definitely can give some anxiety, but like I just think it's so important to know like what's going on with
Yeah.
your money. And I think also like one of the things I used to notice was I always would say I want to be a woman who's got an investment. Like I said that for so long. I want an investment portfolio. I want to build my wealth beyond just me having to work. And I I would say that, and that was kind of like something that I wanted for myself, but I would never take action to do that. And then I kind of got to the end of 2023, and I was like, right, you keep saying this is who you want to become, but like you're 31 now, and like you've not taken any action towards doing it. And I got this app called Plum, and it just generates like auto saving for me every single week. And you can do like more than you want to do, you can do just like an amount that feels good for you, and it'll just figure out like a percentage based on your bank balance, and you can save. So I've actually started saving to invest, which is so nice. And I've actually started I've reduced my debts and stuff. Like, I also was someone who would just have credit cards and pay like minimum payments. And then again, when I was looking at my finances, I was like, okay, why are you doing that? Like, pay it off and get like energetically like get that debt out the way. So last year, that was one of the things that I done, is like I was really intentional about saving to invest and like paying credit cards off. And my whole relationship with money now is so different, because I have a sense of safety in my nervous system around it, and like my body, where it no longer controls me and like completely takes me into like fight or flight. Like, it's
Yes,
a survival response, right?
absolutely. Lydia, can I just pull you on it activated something, the safety thing with money. Yeah. Here's something that I found really helpful, and I think that your listeners will as well. I had the story that when I have more money, I'll feel safer. So when people would say, like coaches said, okay, why do you want more money? And I'd be like, oh, I'll feel safe and relieved and calm. Here's the thing, and I know you know this, but just for the listeners, so it's so clear. You can feel safe no matter what you've got in your account, whether it's £5 or £500,000, you can feel safe with these exercises I teach. And then the money comes. So it used to be like, oh, the money's going to give me the feeling. No, we can choose the feeling. Obviously, it's more than mindset. I have to show you the exercise. And then when you've got the exercise, you start to realize, oh, I'm actually safe no matter what's in my account. I'm actually worthy no matter whether I'm in my overdraft, whether I've got savings. I am worthy. I am ready. I'm capable. And when you feel that safety in the kind of prefrontal cortex, so that part in your brain that comes off board, when you're triggered, it goes offline. But when it comes back online, when you're feeling safe, prefrontal's there, you can make decisions, you can sell yourself, you can put yourself out there because you feel safe. Then the bank account fills up itself. So when I train people, let's say they bring me goals and I'm like, cool, let's look at your goals. But really, your goals always move. So let's say you're on your 10K months and now you want 20, they will move again, and then you'll want 30K. So the goal isn't the thing. What the real goal is how often can we regulate our nervous systems so that we can receive, as you said, in connection with your set point. And when you said that, I was like, yes, I need to tell them that my lie or my myth that I subscribed to was I will feel better when I have more. No,
Oh, me too.
we need to feel better, and then we will attract more. And to
Yeah.
your point, last year was the year I got out of £42,000 debt. Long story how that happened, from my 20s, and last year cleared it all off. I mean, it was over a period of time, but then I
Love
just
that.
I started to earn, properly, but also that was from about 2020 that I really sorted myself out. And then last year I was just closing those chapters, and no regrets on the debt because I invested in my business and my branding and coaches, brilliant. But I just didn't want to live like that anymore. I didn't want to live always owing somebody or something, whether it's a bank or something. It felt like saggy energy. So yeah, no shade. If anyone's got debt, there's no shame in it. Sometimes you need to kind of get what you need to get right now, if it's a program or it's something that's going to help you. But just to remember that that's not the way to move forward forever. It's just a stopgap. And that's why I've always loved like credit cards and loans. I've always been appreciative of, because it's helped me move forward quicker than I could have done. But there also comes a point in your life, and for the listeners, it might be now or it might be in a few years, where you just go, actually, I want to put an end to that chapter and not be in the debt cycle. And it's so energizing when you come out of that, because I was in that for a good 12 years.
That's so amazing when you're able to do that. And
Yeah.
I think like one of the first steps, like if you are in debt as well, is just to like work on the shame. Because I think there's a lot of people who feel like a sense of shame that they're in debt. When actually, if you just like whatever emotion you've attached to being in debt, it's like, okay, if you just sit with that and work through that, and then once you kind of process that and move that icky like sensation and energy out the way, that's creating so much like contraction in your body and your nervous system. And also like, depends on how you feel. Like, a lot of people internalize being in debt and make that mean something about
I
them.
was just
So
going to say, they say I'm a bad person. It's like, no, you're not. I mean,
yeah,
if you're constantly in debt and you never have a plan to look at it, you need a
yeah,
money coach or you need someone to help you. But no, debt can be very, very helpful temporarily. It's just looking at APRs and looking at how. I think the thing that I'm always trying to teach, Lydia, and actually my last talk today on money, I always do this sort of January money thing. It's the last one today, and I'm going to teach it. I think the last thing that I want to say that feels so imperative about money, whether people listening are like really great with their money or not great with their money, is that one of the things I didn't understand is, you know how you do like self-care, like you'd have a bath or you'd like meditate or you'd go for a walk or you'd go and surround yourself by trees and you know that green is good for you. What I never understood is financial fitness. That's self-care. To have a money date once a week where you go, right, what's coming in, what's going out? What are my debts or what are my savings? What are my investments or what is my future projection? And just even, putting on a candle or some nice outfit or a nice drink or a snack and kind of spending half an hour, again, becoming intimate with it will just help you blossom. They say that what you focus on grows. So if what you focus on grows isn't, oh my God, I need to pay my rent, I don't know if I can, and if you actually were to look at it and to breathe and to regulate, as I say, with these kind of physical exercises, once a week, have a money date, put on the candle, maybe put on some music, and just like almost romance yourself, because money exercises can be self-care. And I
Yeah.
always missed that. I always thought that self-care was physical or mental. I never saw that self-care was also financial.
Love that. You know, one of the other things as well that massively helped me was like minimalist. Like not because we also live in this way, and I just like I'm very cutthroat with this, and I think it's because I moved to California, so I had to be really I threw so much of my stuff out. Then I come back, I went to Bali, so I have kind of become accustomed to not really needing much and being okay with not needing much, and also like not being super attached. Like I don't have clothes in my wardrobe that I've had for years because I just had to purge and throw everything out when I moved to California. And so when I was I had to like rebuy so much stuff, and then obviously I moved into the flat, and after the breakup I realized like I just didn't have a lot, I didn't have a lot of stuff. And I was even like just small things. When I needed a winter wardrobe, I was like, right, okay, I don't need more than 2 tracksuits. I'm gonna get a hoodie, I'm gonna get 2 pairs of leggings, 1 pair of trainers. Like that's all I need to start. A good coat, that's it. And I think we live in this society where we I always speak about this on like TikTok and stuff. I'm like, do people not get burnt out with consumerism? Because you come on these apps and there's constantly something, and it's like run, don't walk to the latest thing. And we are forever being fed, you need this, you need that, you need to buy this, you need to buy that. And some of the stuff that I looked at as being advertised, I'm like, that is shite. Like, why do people need that? Why are people gagged at this Stanley Cup that costs £50? Like, I don't understand. I don't understand it. And I think a part of like becoming savvy with money is also really looking at like, where do you spend your money on shit? And where are you really like in that consumerism trap of the amount of clothes, the amount of skincare, the amount of makeup I see people wear? I'm like, do you need all of that though? Because if you actually just, if you like it, buy certain things, but do you need like 5 bronzers and like 65 lip pencils, like at like £10 a pop? Like you probably don't. So if you're more savvy with your money like that and also start to live like a minimalist lifestyle, you can kind of release yourself from that capitalist consumer like power that we just see everywhere at the minute. And influencer lifestyle has obviously added to that a lot more.
I love that so much, Lydia. And when you speak, it reminds me that we can get our kicks from somewhere else.
Yeah.
And I'm trained a lot in part work. I don't know if your audience know
Love
about part
hardware.
work. Yeah, internal family systems is something I did a couple of years back. It changed my life. And essentially, it's the idea that we have all these different parts, or
Yeah.
they have these parts have behaviors, So whether it's firefighter part, let's say you get stood up on a date and then you go and drink a bottle of wine or smoke weed, that firefighter part is trying to put out the pain. So just
Yeah.
like a hose pipe of water, it's like, so let's smoke or let's drink, that he just stood me up. So we've got these different parts that come through and we're never even aware of them unless we've done the work, right? And when you speak about the consumerism, I'm also a minimalist, by the way, so snap. But I
Yeah.
know that not everyone is. I know that some of my friends come round to my house and they're like, why do you have such little stuff? And I'm like, I love it. But it's not for everyone. And I don't want to say that one size fits all, but I would say this. Because of what we're sold, like you said, consumerism, and because we kind of do get, I don't know if is it dopamine or
It's like
from
that
shopping,
reward, isn't it?
or is
Yeah,
it
so it's like when you buy
endorphins?
something, you'll get
Oh,
that.
okay, is it dope? Okay, I thought it was endorphin. Okay, so whichever chemical we're getting, right? So surely I would pose, where can we get our kicks from that isn't from just spending money that we probably don't have on things that we probably don't need?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of another conversation to have. Or again, someone listening could journal and just be like, oh my God, yes. In that maybe they don't need that little £10 thing or that thing in the sale, which by the way, this still means they've spent 50 quid on it just because it's in the sale. They've still spent money. And instead, where could they get their kicks? Could they go to a dance class? Could they go and meet a friend? Could they go to a women's circle? Could they go running? Could they just put music on in their kitchen and just kind of get high from that? And so it's just looking at, again, being astute and aware to our behaviors, whether they're serving us, whether they're actually what we want, or whether we just wrapped up in the commercialism because it's like it's the sale or it's Christmas or it's January or it's just like it's sort of again slowing down to speed up around like, is this what we really want? And if we do want a bit of a buzz, can we get it in a different way?
Yeah. And I think as well, it's like, even imagine so if someone's listening to this who does love like clothes and shopping and will, if there's something trending on social media, they'll buy it,
Yeah.
or they very much like buy off influencers and stuff. That, I'm not saying that's wrong, but I think when we think about becoming money savvy, it's like, imagine instead of spending that money on something that you don't really need because you already have it, imagine you put that into a savings pot, and then imagine you saved for like 3 months, and then you took yourself to like a spa or something, and like instead of getting that immediate, because it's that immediate gratification, isn't it? We've created this almost like hype. So when we think about that in our nervous systems now, apps like TikTok, they create this like stress response of like, oh my God, I need that because it's gonna go. And like actually what we're just feeding into is all of these massive companies that are making money off the fact that we are like hooked, and we're looking for that immediate reward. Like we need the thing. And especially if it's like you have to get this before it sells out, the amount, like the rush that you're gonna get when you receive that, and then you can go on social media and be like, I got the sold out trainers, or look at me with the sold out trainers. You might not intentionally be doing it, but when we think about the hormones that it's triggering off and in our nervous system, it's creating this loop which is giving us that immediate gratification, and it's keeping us in that like dopamine reward hit with spending our money. So it's like, imagine you just put that money aside, and then you could just, like you said, slow it down. And also like the build, it's almost like you can be in relationship with money, like the build up to that thing that you're gonna buy. Then you go and you do that. Like, oh my God, that is like sexy, and it's like money rewarding you, and it's like you're rewarding yourself. Like it's so amazing. And I think even just things like that can like really change your relationship with money, because then if you do something like that, you're there, it's self-love, it's self-care, you spoil it yourself, you've looked forward to it. You've not opened your phone and in 4 seconds bought something. You've had that response in your nervous system of looking forward to that. That's so expansive. That's
I
so
love
amazing when it comes to money.
Yeah, I love this, Lydia. And it reminds me of how underrated delayed gratification is.
Oh, yes.
And like, if you've ever given up chocolate, like I went on the, I mean, I'm not promoting diets, but I went on this like wedding diet for 2 weeks before I got married, which was literally a couple months back. And there were parts of me, if we're talking parts, that were like, you're depriving yourself. You need
Yeah.
more chips and pizza and all these carbs that I just love carbs. I'm a high octane person and I need carbs. But I went on this like no carb thing. Anyway, I'm really not promoting dieting. But here's my point. If we can fall in love with delayed gratification, or if we can look at restrictions sometimes as self-love, not with diets, please don't come for me, guys.
Yeah.
But like with money, like, as you said, saving and then going to the spa, what a great idea, by the way, is that kind of becomes more of like holding back in a way that's self-love rather than in a way that's what's the word, like self-restriction. It's not like restriction, it's like, yeah, it's like leading with love rather than I'm punishing myself, I'm not buying the makeup. It's like, no,
It's
I'm
like
leading with,
foreplay.
yeah, I'm leading with love. Exactly. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like money. It's like life. You're in foreplay with life.
yeah.
Like that might sound ridiculous, but you are, because it's just like you're allowing just like all of the feelings that you get when you think about being in that energy before something happens and you're intimate with someone, or that foreplay before you get to kind of, the big moment of intimacy with someone. It's like that's almost what, when we tap into delayed gratification, we think about making life magic, and we think about life being like a love letter, or life kind of holding us in this embrace. It's like, it's so fucking nice to just kind
Yeah.
of be in that. Oh,
Yeah. But
that sometimes.
sometimes, Lydia, we haven't been taught that. I knew I grew up in a without sharing too much, I grew up in a household where my mum would just spend like really irresponsibly, and she
Yeah.
was really into shopping to the point that I look back and I think, well, you actually a shopping addict. And so it depends what we've learned. Like if we haven't
Yeah.
been modeled that like delayed gratification is healthy and the really being conscious consumer is healthy, then we're often again just repeating patterns that we might have seen in our household, or
Yeah.
repeating like attitudes that our parents had, or whoever, caregivers, whoever it might be. And actually it's like, oh no, it could be different. Like my relationship to this could be different.
Yeah.
Again, one of the journaling things I find really powerful is like, what's your relationship to Christmas? What's your relationship to shopping and consuming? What's your relationship to money? And all of these things might sound like, oh yeah, whatever, I've thought about that, but actually, have you really, like, have you really gone into depth? And I had this whole epiphany around Christmas and getting wrapped up in it, and I was hosting like so many people, and I came out of it on Boxing Day, did this journaling exercise on myself, and was like, Christmas for me is about rest and romance. And because I go out with someone who's all about providing for other people and like basically hosting, I've got tied up into their version of what Christmas is for them. And it's like, wait, no, Starling's version is rest and romance. How can we honor that? So again, by stepping back, slowing down, we get perspective on who we are and what we really, again, authentically want, and then we can create it. Because I feel like otherwise, again, we're wrapped up, as you said, in the influencer selling the lipstick or the stupid Stanley Cup, or we're wrapped up in our partner's version of Christmas or whatever it is. None of this is bad in a micro. If you look at it all individually, it's like nothing, you're not doing anything wrong. But when you really add all these little pieces up, you can live a life that's full of resentment if you don't really honor and look into what you are really about and what you need. And so that's why I'm often about like these little things, like talking about your relationship to consumerism or Christmas. Actually, they do add up because they become the macro of your life. And it's so important that you look at the macro of your life. Otherwise, you wake up at 40, 50, whenever it is, and go, oh shit, I didn't really live my version of Christmas, money, career, child, however, whatever you want to get up to. I lived that person's version of what I should be doing. And that's where things can get sticky, and then you die without having really lived. And so again, in my talks, I'm always talking about how can we really live before we die your version of success, because it will be very different to anybody else's.
So, yeah, I just love like conversations like this. And I think as well, it's like all of these things, they are the money story, aren't they? Like, you know, buying and I think the other thing that I see as well is like there's almost this flip that's happened where people will happily pay like £60 for the Stanley Cup, but think £60 for like a therapy session is way too expensive. And I'm like, mate, like what? Like I don't even have the words, but I'm like, what? I don't, that's so interesting to me. So I think it's just like as well when you observe people's like associations with spending money and what's almost deemed worthy to spend money. It's like or as well, like when we think about this, so there's probably like a journal prompt that you could do around that and reflect on like what do I think is worth spending my money on, or when I think about spending my money on clothes versus self-development, like what do you notice in your body, what arises for you, or even look at like your spending habits. Do you spend, are you comfortable to spend money on X, but if it comes to spending it on something else that actually will have like such a benefit and such a long lasting change to, deeper part of yourself that's going to help you live this life of success in your way of magic and authenticity and self-love. It's like, how does that feel and what do you associate with that? Because I think that's another big like thing that we're seeing in nowadays.
I love this, Lydia, so much. And it reminds me of something I've contemplated a lot in my life, but then now teach, which is money is a reflection of what you value. So
Yeah.
my father loves golf clubs. He's older, obviously, so he loves golf clubs. He loves tennis and being a member of all these sports clubs. And I don't. I love that for him, but I don't. I spend my money on therapy and coaches and facials and my style or whatever. And he would be like, "What?" So it's not that it's right or wrong between the
No.
tennis, the golf, the therapy and the facial, but it's just noticing what do we value. And you make such a good point. If someone can throw 60 quid down in Mac because they've just bought a couple of eyeshadows, why can't they find 60 quid for their mental health? And a story I used to always tell is I started therapy very young for various reasons. I had such PTSD from childhood, and I was 21 or 22. I was at uni, and people used to say, how can you afford therapy? And I was like, well, the money that I could have spent in spoons, Weatherspoons, on alcohol, on a Friday, I spent on my therapist,
So
which
just
at the time was 10 years ago, it was £55. And they're like, oh, well, and I was like, yeah, I just decided not to drink. I needed to look at this. So you can always find, if you really value it, I'm pretty sure can find it. Yeah, it's just what do you value? And a lot of people are lying to themselves. So I'm not saying to shame them, but I'm just saying, like, for me, it didn't make sense to be spending money in spoons as a student. It made sense for me to spend money on this therapist, and thank God that I did, because it's paid way more dividends than getting drunk at spoons. Spoons would have done.
we call it that. That's so funny.
Yeah.
Oh no, what do we call it? Look, a lot of people will call it the weathies. They call it
Oh, Webbies. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's better than spoons.
I love that. How does like authenticity link into this?
I think, again, like we've just touched on, authenticity is designing your life on your terms. And
Yeah.
again, we get caught up in commercialism, or what our father thinks, or what we should be doing, or what it is to be a good wife, or a good mum, or a good this. And then again, we wake up at 40, 50, whatever age, and go, oh, I'm unhappy. This isn't what I wanted. And it's because we've never thought about how we would want it to look differently.
I think also like the trends as well that you see, because like we live in this world now where like social media determines the trend. So one minute something is like amazingly popular, and then it's bananas to me how this works. And then one minute you wake up and it's like, oof, like we don't use that anymore, like, or no one looks like that anymore. And I just like, my friend always tells me about her teenage niece who's I think 17, and something will be so popular, and then like literally Sophie will come in with it and she'll be like, no one's doing that anymore. And Sophie's like, but you were doing it a week ago. She's like, no, the trend's moved on now. And I'm like, what? That is, I cannot. So I think as well, it's like,
My God.
yeah, it's so interesting. So I think again, it's like that trend of, even if there are trends, I think authenticity is important, because it's like it doesn't, I think there's like a pressure for people to fit into that, and to like, like a small example of that is like the Adenola cult that everyone's in. Not saying that if you wear Adenola, like you're in a cult, but when you just walk down the street and you see everybody in Adenola, everyone wearing the same stuff, like it baffles me. And I think it's just sometimes being okay with like, actually, I'm not gonna get that Adenola hoodie, and I'm just gonna like, I don't know, maybe get like a Primark hoodie or something or whatever. I don't need the full launch of that website. I actually can just like save my money and do something else. And just knowing that like that pressure, you can also like step away from that, because it's not really real.
No, but we have that phrase, don't we? Keeping up with the Jones. Is that the phrase?
Yeah, keeping up with the
And
Joneses.
yeah, yeah. And again, it feeds into our need for attachment, as we touched on
Yeah,
earlier, which is I need to be and belong and have the Louis Vuitton and the
yeah,
car. And it's all, again, people say, oh, it's ego. I hate the word sort of ego being thrown around in that way, because we all it's not ego, we all just want to be liked and loved, and we use
yeah.
money as status. Oh, she's got the Louis Vuitton, or she's got the Porsche, as
And
if
also,
she's
like, you can have nice things. Sorry to interrupt, but I know
yeah,
Leah talks about this, doesn't she? We both know Leah. Leah's
yeah.
my client and also a really good friend of yours, and she's like a sales mentor. And she talks a lot on this, and she's like, it's okay to still want the car. And like, I love my Louis Vuitton bag. It's so beautiful. And I want a nice car, but I'm just like, again, tapping into that delayed gratification of, instead of going out right now and getting it on finance and it creating a fuckload of extra outgoings for me, I'm like, okay, one day I'm going to trade my little zippy Fiat and I'm going to have the car that I want. And what a lovely process it's going to be. And the day that I go to buy that car that I want, what a lovely day that'll be, because I've worked to get to that point, and that's nice. So
Yeah.
I think it's, again, it's like we can have these things and be okay with, like, we might want luxury and we might love the nice car and we might love designer bags and we might love makeup, and it's like, that's okay. But when we don't have a good relationship with money, I think we need to look at that first, and we need to create safety. And then when we spend on these things, oh my God, it's like, it's such an enhancement. It
If you
doesn't
even want it
cause,
though, Lydia, what I was going to
yeah,
say is, like, you've thought about it and you want this and you want that, and that's brilliant, and that's an expression of high quality car or a high quality handbag. Brilliant. It's really going to work. It's going to feel slick and smooth. But what I'm talking about on the shadow side is when people are just doing it because they're trying to keep up with the Joneses. They don't even want it. That's
They
what's
don't
so.
even
Gary
want
Vee talks about. I love Gary Vee. He talks about this all the time. He's like, they don't even want it, and yet they've got it. And it's like,
it.
wait, wait, wait. So again, it's that authenticity piece of slowing down to understand what is it that you want and value. And
Yeah.
like you said, you might want the Porsche, and that's fine. But it's knowing that it's coming from a space, A, that you can physically afford it, and B, that you genuinely want it, rather than just from keeping up with the Joneses because you're just trying to make sure that you fit in, which again is that attachments piece earlier, which is doing things because we do them rather than because we actually really want to. Yeah.
That's such a big perspective shift as well. And I think just even that, like, I think there's been loads for people to reflect on in this conversation, but I just think even reflecting on that, it's like if you can be really honest with yourself about like what you've got that you really, really wanted versus what you've got that actually you're just a bit like, "Ah, I didn't really want that." And then actually the things that you desire or that you're working towards. And like I always used to find this in the coaching industry and talk about this is like the whole thing of the 10K months. I'm like, whose is that? Is that yours? Like, do you actually want that? Or is that the coaching industry telling you that's what you should want? And I remember there'd be sessions and clients were like, I don't, I've just plucked that figure. Like, I've never thought about that figure until I started seeing loads of content about it. And I'm like, exactly, like, you're working towards something and you don't even know why you want that. There's not an attach, like there's not an association or like it's not yours. Like someone's just projected that onto you, and now you're working so hard and you're flustered and you're feeling unsafe and you're feeling unworthy because you don't have these 10K months. And I'm like, and how interesting to notice that that's not even yours. And then we go, yeah, I feel actually 5K, 6K a month would be like phenomenal for me. It makes it you're even bypassing a number that would be amazing for you to make as a female business owner. You're bypassing that and going beyond that. That's just going to cause unsafety straight away when you think about creating that figure because actually, wouldn't it be so lovely to go smaller, but feel so like good about working towards that number?
Literally.
It's just crazy, but it's super interesting. And then tell me a bit about you do these house parties,
Concerts.
concerts. Love these.
And actually, in a minute, I have to go and yeah, I've got to go and prepare for. I interview the hosts. So here's what happened in May 2024. I made a reel, which was a genuine like I am so tired kind of reel. I'm tired of being online. I want to bring this offline.
Yeah.
We've had pandemic, like everything's about Instagram, and whilst I'm grateful for my following, it can feel disconnected. It's like post, see some likes. It's just wanting that human touch. And essentially, I made this reel saying, I want to take this connection that we have online. I want to take it offline, and I'm not playing festivals this summer. I'll come and sing for you if you want me to in your kitchen or your house or your garden. Let
Oh,
me know
fun.
if this is something that you want to do. In the UK is where I'm going to start because it's where I live. And it went viral. I played 35 houses in the summer, over 4,000 miles traveled in my little yellow Beetle. And we then, there's a lot to tell you, but in a nutshell, then did another tour in December. So I literally just finished that 2-3 weeks ago with a cameraman. And then we're now putting all the footage together to look at a show concept and the sort of the next stages on what that will be. But I always teach this for my talks with musicians or my mentoring, because when you think outside the box, you often get extraordinary results. And whilst it's a bit unconventional, and yes, I did vet them so that I wasn't going to get like raped or murdered, what I noticed is I had more fans than I thought,
That's
and
lovely.
often what we're doing is looking for more followers, more money, more this, more audience. And whilst I do advocate growth, and I'm also wanting more growth, often when we're so obsessed with I want more, is we're not appreciating what we do have. So even if you only have 5 likes every time you post or 50 likes, that's still 50 heartbeats. So again, what I teach is depth over breadth and appreciating the heartbeat rather than disconnecting the human from the metric. And yeah, I went to their houses. There was no financial barrier to entry, so I did council estates to mansions, horse farms to bungalows, and then because of the lack of financial barrier, they all donate, and the donations went towards my album, of which I'm currently recording. So yeah, it was a life-changing year, and moving forward, I'm just working out whether to bring it to New York in a couple months, and then whether to, as I say, put it on a TV channel. So watch this space.
Finally, I would love to know what it means to be wild, wise, and whole for you.
Wild, wise, and whole. is about this conversation in a nutshell, living life in alignment with my truth rather than living life with other people's expectations and ideas of a successful life. So when I'm in attunement with myself and I'm taking action from that attunement, that true essence is a life that I love. And to me, that's wild and wise and whole.
Pleasure to have a conversation with you. And where can people find you and how could they work with you?
Well, firstly, thank you for having me, Lydia. I'm a
You're
huge
welcome.
fan. And when you asked me, I was an instant yes. So I'm very, very grateful to be with you, and just your energy is something I'm obsessed with. So my website is starlingsworld.com. So STARLINGS world.com. And you can find music there. You can find mentoring. I also give talks, as I said, internationally. And I'm going to release a record soon. So it's all there. And if people want to apply to house concerts, again, it's on starlingsworld.com. If people are more of an Instagram chick, I'm on Starling's World on Instagram, and I'm on other social media, but that's really my like main spot. And if they want to hear the music, I'm on YouTube and Spotify as Starling's World.
Songs are so nice. Thank you so much for being here. Enjoy the rest of your day. And yeah, I've loved this conversation. So if anyone gets anything from it, please feel free to share with us and drop us a message. I would appreciate that. Thank you so much, love. Bye.